This is some
and I
slot
suppose-
track you've been imagining for quite some time.
Well, because you get castles, the Queen visits. There's
Yeah.
there's helicopters. There's a nightclub with real working disco lights. But I keep telling you, you'll see it.
Put the
when
Queen
you
in
come
there.
There's quite a
She can
few
park
of
a Porsche 911 outside and go clubbing.
Hello, welcome to Talking Utter Slot, the podcast about having fun playing with toy cars. My name is Scott.
And I'm Nick, and this week we'll be talking about what happened in Abergavenny yesterday at the Wye Valley Autumn Stages.
And we're looking forward to new things from Avant Slot and others, news out of the Foro Slot.
And I've been driving die-cast metal slot cars, wondering what's happened to the post.
Sorry, just but die-cast metal slot cars.
Yes.
That sounds dangerous.
Yeah, it was actually. They were really quick, too.
Tell me more.
Well, it was a little thing that happened at the end of Slot Rally because there was a guest track there, which Rob Bushell has built. It's a very nice, long, smooth, flowing wooden thing, which took 4 months apparently to build that, and it's got overhead lights, its own little on street lighting. It's got a nice little sort of GT3 pitty paddocky area, and it's just very, very pretty. And it's got an underpass, and I'm all in favour of tracks going down and under and up again. And the carousel from the Nürburgring, which you drive the wrong way round, and it's sort of R1 rather than R4 probably. But, it's there. And he runs 1/43rd scale die-casts into which, well, he makes his own 3D printed chassis. He puts Super Bonkers Skinny Motors in, like I think he got a 25 or 30,000 RPM thing. And at the end of the rally,
Super Bonkers ought to be the brand name. Super Bonkers slot motor. Super Bonkers.
When we'd finished the big stuff, he offered people the chance to drive 143rd cars around his beautiful 143rd cars around his beautiful track, which sort of is made for both 32nd and 43rd. And it was great fun. But yeah, the weight of them is quite sort of... It's okay because Lawrence and I went from our club, and one advantage that not running with brakes ever at Farnborough Park has is that you don't go in too deep with a very heavy slot car at the end of a very long straight. You've already backed off quite enough for it to get round.
Rob's he's done some really nice videos about converting those cars. So taking the how to do it. So if anyone's looking on Swift Slots on YouTube.
Yes. Well, he said, because he greeted me like a long lost friend, and I'm like, hello. And he said, "Oh, I'm always involved in your comments on your," and I'm like, okay. So
was this your first chat, out meeting your adoring public? Was this the first time?
There were one or two references to things that we've said in the course of the day, things that I've said, but that's
nothing
fine.
libelous, I don't think.
Not yet.
Not
half
yet.
an hour. Let's go.
That's the time. This time. So obviously, the big they have to hear you went all the way to Wales.
We did
to play with toy cars, which I did back in the summertime, which has the benefit of being summertime. So it was like bright and sunny and daylight and warm. You went in the middle of winter.
I know. So I went in April and it was cold but dry. And then I went yesterday and it was cold and not particularly dry and very, very not dry on the way home. So, yeah, it's a lovely place. Lawrence hadn't been there before. He's been to the other Abergavenny Club, which I'm yet to go to. And we're obviously helping the other Abergavenny Club do Slot Rally GB next year with the final round. And we're in touch with both clubs. But Lawrence has never been to Wye Valley, which is in a beautiful old, I don't know, it must be Georgian, maybe even older. We think it might have been a snooker hall beforehand, just from the way everything's set up. It's lovely. But presumably the budget is a bit beyond anything that we do in the basement of a school to maintain such a property. But yeah, it's a big, busy club. They do things their way, which is not exactly box stock, I think, for most things. Or, it's high end stuff, whereas they certainly don't fiddle around with SCX and Scalextric like we do.
Do you mean they haven't been converting bargain bucket Subarus all week in
No,
preparation for the rally?
there were only two bargain bucket Subarus that could be seen. One was mine and one was Lawrence's.
So what did you take and how did you get on?
I took
paint us a picture with
okay.
words.
So I took 4 cars, which is the maximum any one person can enter. So I took my SRC Capri because everyone else runs SRC Porsches, and I just thought, let's be a bit different. And also, you're not going to win with the same car as the guys who go there every week. And it's a bit of fun, and it's a bit more taily than the Porsche, a bit less nervous, and I like it. So, okay, fine. In 80s, 90s, I took 2 Subarus, one being the MSC one, and one being the Scalextric one. And then in modern, I had all sorts of plans, and then I found a cheap Ninko because it was in the Costa Dorada rally livery, the promo one that they used to do for Catalunya rally. The last of the sort of 3-box Imprezas, 2006-7 car with the Hawkeye, is it they call that one? I don't know. Subaru people know these things. I'm not really one. But yeah, it was the Hawkeye-ish sort of pointy one, but it's got suspension and an NC6 motor. And I know that people tend to run other stuff, NSR Porsches being seemingly the favourite, but the NSR Porsche is not a rally car and has never been one. It's a Le Mans car. It's not a GT3. Just sticking a passenger in it does not make it a rally car. So I sort of benchmarked when I went in the spring, I took an NSR Clio, which everyone went, it's a bit big for a Clio, isn't it? And I'm like, well, you're running NSR Porsches. So this time I looked at the results from last time, and there was a Subaru Impreza that did relatively well. One of these ones with suspension and an NC6. So I thought, okay, well, that's a cheap one in a fairly garish livery. I'll take that. So I did, and it went okay, actually. That was totally stock. It literally, because what has happened to the post? What has happened to the post? I bought this thing, won it, whatever, about 8 days prior, and it turned up the afternoon before the event. So there was no time to respray it as Valentino Rossi's New Zealand rally black car with gold wheels, which was my original plan. Although actually now I'm warming to it, and I might keep it in Costa Dorada livery.
All right.
I'm not a fan of the red rear wing, but apart from that, it's quite a pretty thing. Yeah, so it arrived the afternoon before, so it was literally magnet out, a bit of tungsten putty in the mag pocket, and that was about it. Oh, yeah, tungsten, isn't it? Slotted sells tungsten putty for about, I think it's $12.99 for 10 grams or something, as the super duper high-tech slot car stuff. Or you can go to an angling shop where you use it to make weights to your own shape and design, and it costs about £8 for 25 grams.
Wow.
So, yeah, go angling if you want tungsten putty, but it is super malleable and super, super heavy. So I like it, and it makes your cars quieter as well because there's nothing to vibrate.
It dampens it all down, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, that was just tungsten putty, Ninko tyres, fresh out of the box. I ran it on a battery for an hour or so just to make sure the motor wasn't going to go pop, and off it went, and it did pretty well, actually. The fastest car I had was the Porsche, which came 11th in class. And I was looking at my times because I ran my SRC Porsche at the spring event and I was 30 seconds quicker. And I was like, yeah, that's a bit crap. And then I looked and everyone was 30 seconds slower this time because there were extra laps run on the snow one and the polycar track was longer. And then we had this beautiful wooden stage from
Rob.
So, yeah.
How many folk were there? What was the field, as it
Well,
were?
there were 71 cars, so roughly 22, 23 people, I'd have thought.
Okay. Not bad.
Lawrence took 7 cars because he had 3 proxy entries for his son, who was actually in bed at university all day.
Wise.
He was texting through the day, but you could actually be sitting next to a student these days and they'll be texting you. Lawrence was complaining bitterly that when he picked... I'm dropping Toby right in it now, but when he picked Toby and his mates up from playing football, and they all just jumped in the car, put their headphones in, and started getting on their phones, and they were typing away. And afterwards, Lawrence said, "Didn't you want to talk to your mates about the game?" And he said, "Well, we were just texting each other whilst we were listening to our music." This is what
Modern
young
life.
people do today. Yeah.
Modern.
So there we are. Toby joined us by text, and his cars didn't do very well.
Okay.
But the SCX, his standard SCX Escort was quicker than Lawrence's modified one, though, which is quite funny. They both fell over in the same places, but when Lawrence's modified one fell over, it was much smoother.
Well, you mentioned this, so I've been watching, and it depends when everybody listens to this. So over the weekend, or that started on Thursday, I think, there's been what's called the Roger Albert Clark Rally. And if you shorten those initials, you get RAC Rally, which gets us old folks all excited because that's the proper rally in November. Goes on for days, all over Wales, north of England, Scotland. And so this is a historic car rally, largely. There's a few modern cars in it, but mostly historic cars. And it's been great. So there's a YouTube channel doing mostly live. Must be half the stages live. So I don't have to drive to Wales or Kielder.
It is a bit of one stage, isn't it? It's doing one corner live, isn't it?
Yeah. To be fair, yeah, that's true.
There's no drones, no in-car cameras.
Oh no, there is. They have a drone. Every now and again, there's some drone footage and things, and they interview at the end of the stage, so it's not too bad. But the benefit is I can do it in my pajamas on the sofa, eating toast and drinking tea, rather than dressing up in wellies and traipsing into the middle of a forest and then wondering where the nearest loo is. So it has huge advantages as far as I'm concerned.
Like a tree.
But that temperatures like that, I can't grip the. But the thing is, it's just, I think out of like 150 entries, 99 of them or 100 of them are Mark II Escorts or Escorts, but mostly Mark II Escorts. And it just reminded me, the first time I ever went to a rally was 1984, I think, 1985, mid-Wales, blah, blah. And it was just endless Escort after Escort after Escort. And it really kind of put me off rallying because it was muddy and they don't make a nice noise. It's a very kind of harsh noise. And they all look silly because they've got wide arches and they're on skinny forest tyres, so they don't look right at first. And it wasn't until I discovered sort of World of Sport tarmac rally coverage I went, oh, those look good. Those mantas and things like that. So I've come to appreciate the Mark II Escort, not least through owning several SCX versions. But it just reminds me that every time you see one, you think, oh, God.
They're very special things, and it was a very special time. I'm sure there are twice as many, at least, in action today than there were back in period. Pretty much every two-door Escort body shell, be it Mark 1 or Mark 2, I think is now on a rally stage somewhere. And also you can build them brand spanking new. So people do, because people want to drive cars that Ari Vatanen drove. And why wouldn't you, really? It's cheaper than driving a 205.
Is it? It probably is, isn't it? Yeah. But what was really, and I think we were slightly denied, albeit, wasn't put any effort into it. So there was the Stratos, which is still going as we speak, which is very nice, makes a magnificent noise, and seeing that with it sliding about. But there was effectively a brand new TR7 V8 in works livery, being driven by a man who knows what he's doing. And unfortunately, stage 1, it stuck in gear, and then it was playing catch-up. Beginning of stage day 2, it had a problem with doing catch-up, and then it was out for a reason. So I feel slightly denied, but they're building, I think, 5 or 6 of those things. So I've already decided...
How many Porsche 914/6s are there taking part? Because if you're in the
Absolutely
slot
none.
world, there's very
Absolutely
little
none.
else.
And there was no GT Le Mans 911s either. But there was a few 911s, but as I say, these TR7 V8s. So if I win the lottery, I'm going to
Right.
order one of those. I mean, I'll crash terribly, but the noise is just fantastic. That V8,
Yeah.
and compared to the
you do have to grow a
harshness,
Tony Pond moustache to go with it, though.
well, I suppose I could just shave bits off and dye it a bit. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's got to be done. You can't drive a TR7 V8 without a big moustache.
Well, the guy, I'm going to get his name. Was it Chris Ingram who was driving it? Chris somebody. Forgive me if I got it wrong. Because he was growing a moustache for Movember, which, by the way, I don't really understand, because most charity things, if I go a charity walk or a charity climb or a charity something, you're doing something.
Yeah.
Growing a moustache is literally not doing anything. You're literally stopping doing something. Anyway, he was taking part in that, and so he had a bit of a moustache. So it he was a bit, there was a bit Pondesque. The car was certainly being driven very nicely while it was going. But what it means I want is please, 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 somebody make a modern, proper slot car TR7 V8. Thank you very much.
Preferably someone like SRC, because SRC is apparently the only way to go in slot rally at the moment, unless you're Avant slot. So those are the brands to use, and we're quite limited in terms of the available cars. So a TR7, it's low. Obviously, it'll be wide because most manufacturers make wide cars, and it would be very welcome. Please, 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 and a Chevette whilst you're at it. We were talking about Chevettes all weekend. Everyone wants Chevettes. Nobody's making them. There's the old O-Car one, but then you'd need a pig iron chassis to be able to sort of level up the weight.
It's not the way forward for anything, is it? Really, never mind.
No.
So, apart from stuff not arriving in the post,
yes,
have you done
it? I was desperate for tyres because I suddenly realised that all my cars had absolutely no tyres whatsoever that were worth using. So I sort of didn't call Pendle because you can't call Pendle, but I did send an emergency note into the ether, which Sean responded to in moments. I was super impressed by that. And then he sort of went, no, you can't order tyres on a Friday and expect them to arrive on a Saturday.
I think that's fair.
Yeah, I know. I was just desperate and I'd had a bit of a busy week. So Friday afternoon was the only time I'd had to sort of think about going rallying on Sunday, which isn't ideal, I know. So anyway, I banged in an order for a couple of bits and pieces and added some tyres on there, sort of hopefully. And Sean was like, nah, it's never going to happen. Lo and behold, and I didn't even buy the extra service, not tracked, not 24-hour, not nothing. Stand-up post, boom, box on the doorstep the next day.
Fantastic.
And yet, some stuff has taken... Well, Steve at Staffs, bless him, so I was looking for some of those steel Ford wheels that they put on the RS2000 police car, which Pendle has stocked, and I've bought a couple of sets recently for professionals' cars, and I wanted a couple more sets, and Pendle hadn't got any. And I asked Steve if because he's the distributor for Team Slot, are they coming back into the country? He said, I've got a few. I'll sell you them direct because nobody's ordered any recently. So I bought a couple of sets of wheels and a couple of sets of tyres, and I tried to get you some checkered flag Stratos inserts, but they are not to be found. And I did succeed, at least in getting to the post box from Steve, some replacement Renault 5 wheels for our clubmate Franco, whose Renault 5 wheels exploded in a hail of plastic and super glue. So he's now got replacements for those. But somewhere they're in the post, and they've been in the post now for 8 long days. 8 long days. And actually, Steve's a little bit closer than Pendle is, so Sean must have some magic that he weaves with the Royal Mail.
there was some special because you'd pleaded, you could sense you were desperate for whatever it was, and
Maybe. I mean, but some stuff, like Lawrence bought two cheapy Scalextric rally cars. He bought a set pair. So he wanted the Ford Focus because he's got a 3D chassis for it. And there was a red Subaru, which I was going to add to the basket of dirt cheap Scalextric Subarus, which I'm now slightly less in love with than I was, having now run one in slot form at Wye Valley yesterday and finished a thumping 66th out of 71 competitors. Not only that, but I was slower than Lawrence with his one, although his was decidedly dodgy because he put springs under the body mount post. So there was a spring between the chassis and the body mount post, so that it was sort of. He thinks it brought suspension. It really just made it list from side to side as it went round. Quite dramatic and exciting fashion, and it did look, like it was going hard round the corners. But I don't think it did very much for the performance. He did outperform me by 6 seconds. And that's including me. I did a bit of a place because there's a stage called Nemesis which goes up about 5 feet or something. It's called 33 feet of terror, because it's constantly going upwards and then constantly coming downwards, and there are very few cars that can do it very well. And I accidentally, it was an accident, although thinking about it, it would have been a really good strategy, threw it off the cliff and it sort of fell down onto the bottom deck and was re-slotted at the bottom. So I sort of missed half a lap there. And even so, I was still 6 seconds off Lawrence's pace for the entire rally. The guide is the big problem. The cars are actually not bad on the right tyres, which we didn't have. They need NSR Super Grips or slotted F22s. That's what you need for slot rally, because they're just soft enough, but they don't go off if they overheat. So there you go. There's a slot rally tip for
overheat. How do you overheat a slot?
Oh, you can overheat. Yeah, you can. I tried Ultra Grips once, and they started sort of chunking. And they do.
Just
they do
from
go
driving
off
it round.
Just from driving it round. Yeah, obviously really hard. Drive it really hard, really fast. Yes, yes.
But those slot rally stages, you can't go that fast. I mean, they're all.
Yeah, but they're quite. What's the word? Abrasive. Especially the wooden ones.
I really find. I mean, I'm sort of,
Well, you've got tons of weight in there as well. I mean, like 100 grams is normal for a slot rally car. It's got quite a bit of poke and power, and you've got really, really soft rubber on it on an abrasive surface. So yeah, they do sort of get a bit melty. So Ultra Grips, no. Super Grips, yes. And F22s, yes. F15s, no.
So how long before we see a kind of slot car tyre van service, in the corridor of a slot rally?
There's one coming. It's got tyres on the roof.
A perfect unintentional segue into tell the listeners what you've spotted and what you want from Santa.
Well, Avant Slot has very kindly got ahead of the curve and announced its 2024 range at Foro Slot in Spain, which is quite exciting.
Makes sense.
Really. And they've also announced the rest of the 2023 range, which, I don't know, maybe it was a secret, but there is an Audi Sport Quattro S1, not an E2, never an E2. If you ask a German, they'll laugh in your face if you say Quattro E2, particularly if they worked at Audi. So it's the mad, wingy Audi Sport Quattro short wheelbase thing that did wheelies on gravel that everyone loves and thinks about when not thinking of the long wheelbase Quattro. And yeah, it's coming from Avant Slot this December, which is practically days away.
But also there's also going to come with service.
It comes with an van which is covered in tyres and HB Audi stickers.
Lovely.
So that's quite exciting. I think it will be obviously the third short wheelbase wingy Quattro after the Revel, which is sadly never going to come back again because all the moulds got thrown away in China, and the Scalextric one, which is not as quick as the unwingy short wheelbase one, because Scalextric made the unwingy one, and then to make the wingy one, they just stuck lots of bits on. So the body's really top heavy compared to almost anything, particularly the other Quattro.
On the Rebel one, purely for aesthetic reasons rather than performance ones, but it did help. I put on SCX wheels and tyres.
Yes.
So instead of it sitting perched up on little thin tyres, it sort of rides a bit lower and it's on those. It looks fantastic, but it also goes a lot better as well. But
well, it helps that the guide goes in the slot if you've got smaller wheels on, because that's the problem with the Rebel one.
Exactly.
The guide sort of floats around vaguely close to the rails, but not actually between them.
Well, guides are, the slot, you notes you were sending me, you said the trouble with the standard Scalextric's car at the slot rally was the guide is either too long or too deep, sort of thing.
It's not deep enough, but it's also too fat. And it was it really struggled on the car park. I was 50 seconds off the fastest time on the car park stage, which is a little 2-layer sort of multi-story car park, and it's got a ramp. You go up and wiggle around the top deck, and then you come back down the ramp and wiggle around the supports, and then that. And it's not, it's not sort of furniture grade carving that's been done of the rails. It's a little bit wonky in places, and you need a really good guide to cope with it. Otherwise, your car gets stuck, which is what happened to mine repeatedly, because it was just a little bit too thick and intransigent. There's a thought. Thick and intransigent. Not many people like that in the world.
I'm tempted to just put up some captions under our faces for the next. I'll have to do that now, won't I? But yeah, mentioning the Audi on the back of a VW van on a trailer, what I noticed going through not just the Avant slot list, and I'll come back to some of that, but also Hobby Classic was showing Alfa Romeos towing a trailer with a bike on them in various colours. Now, I'm not a bikeist, so I don't. Yeah.
What sort of Alfa Romeos?
Racing Giulia's, which seems a bit odd, but they've got a Ducati. If it's a red car, it's a red bike. If it's a yellow car, it's a yellow bike. And I think in the Avant slot one, they were, as well as the Mercedes Ren Transporter, if that's the right way of putting it, the race car transporter, the blue thing. They showed an extended VW sort of pickup bus that's got. I'm trying to think what was on the back of it. A Porsche, I think, in the back of it. So it definitely seems to be a trend for slot cars towing slot cars of some sort of other. At the top end, of course, is the Bugatti with the baby Bugatti, although it's not towing it. And then you get rally vans towing rally cars, cars towing bikes, boats, slot boats. I don't know. Anyway, Avant slot out of all. So what surprised me was Impreza and Ford Sierra Cosworth Saloon. I wasn't expecting them to. Those I thought were coming from Fly and have been coming from Fly for the last 20 years.
Fly last week put out a request for what liveries people wanted to see on their Sierra 4x4s. I answered with 3 different ones. Yeah, I asked for the Gwyndaf Evans one because that would sell pretty well in this country, and I'm sure that most other countries wouldn't dismiss a Q8 branded Sierra. Louise Aitken Walker's one, because there aren't enough Louise Aitken Walker cars in the world. And did you see that Avant Slot has got the Opel Kadett GSI / Mark II Astra GTE on its list of future releases in 2024, which means you can do a Louise Aitken Walker car.
I did see that, and I thought it was only slightly less odd than Fly doing the front-wheel drive Renault, the Mark II Renault 5, but not the turbo or anything. Just that's a really odd
one.
Choice from what.
That's what they're waiting for, isn't it? It's the big spin-off Ali G bucks.
Ali G one. Well, having done the Queen, and they're now going to add Tom Cruise. Because for those who don't know, so Fly, presumably with all the licenses in place, presumably, have just launched.
Does the Queen have a license? Did she have a license?
There's a 911 supposedly from Top Gun with a little
Really?
Tom Cruise standing beside it. There's a 911 in green with a crest with the Queen standing beside it. And we've had James Bond standing beside something.
Yeah.
So, yeah, maybe we can have a Renault 5 with that Ali G standing beside it.
Well, yeah, I suppose you sort of have to with that car because there's not that many options for the mould.
I find it astonishing, but there you go. But so the growth of 3D printing is not just in chassis; it's in tiny figures. It would seem.
It is. I've got a 3D Spaniel. It's true.
I've got one of the, when I saw the Queen's Porsche. None of us believe that she actually owned a 911, by the way, if you're listening. But
she had a Jaguar X type estate like my wife.
Well, maybe, but Fly have produced a green 911.
I know.
But there was no Corgi. But I have got a 1/32 scale Corgi because I purchased.
You knew this release was coming, wasn't it? You get all
no.
excited.
I, as you know, I'm the man with a 1/32 scale castle. So I used to just buy anything that was 1/32 scale that was going to go on the track. And a millennia ago, I think it was Corgi or Dinky made like a royal carriage, which is like a whole train of horses with this like 6 horses or something, and a carriage with some figures in it, the Queen or whoever's in it. And you think, fine. But it comes with a tiny little Corgi just walking behind it in
so
plastic.
You've got like the gold coach somewhere.
It's not gold. It's I'll have to dig it out. But yeah, it's some sort of ceremonial coach thing. And it cost. It cost me like a tenner or something, so it can't be anything terribly special. But it's intact.
This is some slot track you've been imagining for quite some time.
Well, because you get castles, the Queen visits. There's there's helicopters. There's a nightclub you with real working disco lights. But I keep telling you, you'll see it.
Put
when
the Queen
you come
in there. She can park a Porsche 911 outside and go clubbing.
This
with Ali G.
This would be made to have vignettes from this lot, along with all my Carrera grid girls, which are.
They might be a little bit underdressed for the Queen. I'm not sure.
Well, it's a nightclub, It was made for me by a friend. It's got a glitter ball. It's fantastic. And I found there's a model railway thing, which is a tiny little LED circuit board thing. You just plug it on a 9-volt battery, and it alternates through all sorts of different flashing lights. So when you put it inside the building, you get all this sort of. It's either a demonic possession or it's a disco, depending on what music you play in the background.
Well, if you stick the Queen in there as well, then who knows what could happen.
So what? We've gone very off on a tangent. I did think actually there's a sort of maybe the run into Christmas this year rather than because I've done things like door numbers and wheels and stuff. Maybe this year I'll do things, unexpected accessories for the slot car track. So the not cars, which may do very well because I posted a picture of my empty pit lane. You think, why would you do that, Scott? Well, because as regulars, my habit of getting more cars out than I put away is, so the track is littered with cars normally.
Right.
And in a real endeavour big effort, I got all the cars put away. So the pit lane was actually empty of slot cars. And I took a picture of it. Thought, So I posted this on a couple of the Facebook groups going, my empty pit lane, that doesn't happen very often, thinking nothing of it. It's getting hundreds and hundreds of likes. Stuff I put up with cars on them gets a handful of likes, but literally a picture with no slot cars on it.
I think it's our listener who's glad that you finally tied it up. Just liking it everywhere it can be found.
I'm glad I found out because it's very cold at the slot shed at the minute, and it's a decision about whether I pay to heat it or buy more slot cars. And buying more slot cars always wins. What out of to go back to the advanced slot launch announcements. What else is in? So you've a Sierra in Q8. I'm guessing there's another Subaru in 555. Surely
It's the
you've got
Legacy, isn't it?
The Legacy, yeah.
Yeah. If I get a Legacy, I'd probably go for the pre 555 Subaru livery, the pink and blue and sort of 80s nastiness, which I really like.
Yeah, that's quite. It's because not a obvious livery, that one, but that was the early success. Was it? Was that Burns? Yeah.
Burns drove that
So
one, and Colin did, I think.
So you could have you could put with a Scale Auto Mitsubishi. There's a few Richard Burns cars suddenly coming out.
Well, there's one I just built. Totally out of the blue. I built the Evo 4 using an SCX last week because the weather was nice and I could spray some paint around. And I've had this. I bought these decals 10 or 12 years ago from a very nice friend in Spain who makes beautiful decals, which are all now available at Alaya. He doesn't sell them himself anymore. And he did the 97 Burns RAC Rally Mitsubishi. So all white with a black nose and a bright yellow stripe and charisma on it, which was possibly, when thinking of the road car, the least appropriate branding ever put on a rally car. Anyway, so Richard drove this car, and I actually had a ride in it because we did a PR day. Because he was actually at the time competing in the Asia Pacific Championship with Mitsubishi. And we did a bit of PR for him and Robert every so often. And he used to come home from Asia, and the first thing he'd do was go to TGI Fridays because he was really excited by TGI Fridays. So anyway, I built this car last week when I should have been doing other things. But I've been sitting on these decals for 12 years. I bought a ratty old Evo 4 SCX to put them on. And for the benefit of the non-Spotify/podcast listeners, I should go and get it now because I can see it over there.
Okay. Well, that's a bit short interlude. Well,
ta-da!
So that's quite pretty, actually.
It's not bad. It had a sort of fluorescent yellow stripe on the nose, and I just so happened to have some fluorescent yellow from one of my many Subarus. So that's done. I had to fashion a extra number plate because obviously the constabulary in Cheltenham, as it was, the first Cheltenham RAC rally at the racecourse, took a dim view of just putting a sticker of a number plate on the bonnet, as they could do in Europe, and so they had to put an actual number plate on the front of the car, which looks a bit odd, but I quite like that. It's distinctive. So that's a little bit of plasticard. And yeah,
good attention to detail. Yeah, good attention to detail.
Yeah, and for those not in view of a screen of this podcast, yeah, it is a white SCX Evo 4 with some stickers on, which I freshened up the wheels a bit as well. So yeah, that was nice, and it was a project I've been waiting 12 years for an opportunity to do. One hadn't presented itself, and one didn't last week, but I did it anyway.
It's quite good the way you've thought something's taken 12 years to not be done, and then you just went, bang, I'm doing it now. That's good.
And did it in 3 days. Boom.
So is there anything in the painting pipeline? That's easy for me to
say. Yeah, it's quite a lot, as ever. Especially as I have weakened. Somebody paid that I didn't expect me to pay. They expect to pay me before Christmas. So I bought myself the Scale Auto Evo 5, which will be a Burns car. And it means I've actually got Evo 4, 5 and 6 now. Because I've got a top slot Evo 6 in Tommy Mackinnon Marlborough livery. But I shall do the Evo 5 as Richard Burns's 98 RAC car because he won.
Rounding out a very rally theme, and I know I don't know how many listeners are into slot car rallies, but Spanish obviously are. Winging its way to me.
Should we be broadcasting in Spanish? Is this what you're telling me?
Spanish? Do you speak Spanish?
No,
me neither. So,
okay.
Although by the magic of the internet, they can watch it on YouTube and select auto translate, and the captions would appear in Spanish. So if you want to know what you read like in Spanish, you wouldn't sound any different. If you want to know what you read like. No, there's another SCX Lancia Integrale
Yes.
coming my way, because you can never have too many, which is in the toe-tip livery, which is
Yes.
a bit like the Repsol livery, but it's a toe-tip livery. And I must have about, I don't know, 7 or 8 of those over the years. But, every time I see one, I went, oh, yeah, I want one. Which is why I'm very agitated and hoping that the team slot Bastos liveried Integrale. Well, it's not an Integrale, it's just a Delta, isn't it, that one?
Yeah.
Which has just been announced by Hobby Classic. I think I knew they were doing it, but then when you see the actual car, it's like, oh. So hopefully that'll find its way via some sort of circuitous route to Gaydon next weekend. And if it does, I'll have to walk up and part with my folding.
Gaydon next weekend, Scott?
Yes.
There is an event at Gaydon next weekend?
Yes. The winter, yeah, unless I've got my days all horribly wrong. No, it is next weekend.
What date is it?
Whatever the Sunday is. Is that the 3rd? So the Gaydon
I've got a job interview in Gaydon on Monday the 4th, so I think I might go up a little early and find a travel lodge somewhere. Oh, that's good.
Stay. There you go. Yeah. So yeah, it's the winter slot market, I think. So essentially, same venue as the UK Slot Car Festival, but not the same. Lots of traders, a few tracks, but it's really about hoovering up lots of slot car bargains in the run up to Christmas.
I'll be going.
That's what I tell. That's what I tell myself. Alrighty, I think that'll probably do us for this week. So next week is not rallying; it's Gaydon. It's buying slot cars and maybe seeing a Land Rover. Would you resist a Land Rover if it's there in the palm of your hand?
Yeesh. No, I've got other priorities. I do want one, but I've got other priorities.
Okay. You want to shave all that. You want to change the chassis, don't you? You want to put a drop arm on it.
It should have a drop arm on it. No, I just want it to trundle around with my professionals' cars.
Okay, all right. Well, so that's something to look forward to for both of us, is a long drive to Oxfordshire and then spending lots of money on slot cars. Right. Shall we say goodbye?
Let's. Goodbye.
Bye, everybody.